finishing up 12.3. So picking up from where we left off on Wednesday. So the key to the elimination method is that you must have opposites. You must have opposites in order to do elimination. Opposite means same number, different signs. Same number, different signs. So if you have opposites in the problem, just like we did with example 1, we get rid of the opposites and we add up everything else. Get rid of the opposites, add up everything else. So example 1 is the best case scenario that we have because the opposites are already there. For every other situation we did on Wednesday, we had to multiply by something to force the opposites to take place. So in example 2, we multiplied by -1 because we already had the same number. So if we already have the same number, and we just need the opposites, we multiply by -1. Another scenario, we don't have opposites, but we have something that we can reasonably multiply. So 4 and 5 aren't opposites, 3 and 6 aren't opposites, but 3 times 2 will give me 6. So it's very easy to just multiply by 2. And then we threw the negative on there to force the opposite to take place. So that's multiplying one equation by a multiple. Then we did 2 examples in which we multiplied both equations. So that's what it took a little bit more time, a little bit more energy. When you don't have multiples, you pick a variable, you multiply the numbers in front of those variables, and then you multiply each equation to force the opposites to take place. Once we get the opposite, get rid of them, solve the problem. So we did several scenarios on Wednesday. Is it going to tell you which scenario is taking place? No. You're going to have to look at the problem and figure it out. You have to look at the problem and figure it out. So that's why we did at least one of each type. So, any questions, concerns, comments before we work some word problems? Now we're good. Opposites cancel out. Everything else gets added. So to figure out which variable you get rid of, you first have to look at the problem. If it's a problem that already has, that are already multiples of each other, then you multiply the smaller equation, and then you can cancel out the opposites. If it's a problem that doesn't have multiples, for example, there's nothing times 5 that will give you 7 for the x's. There's nothing times 8 that will give you 12 for the y's. So that means you have to pick a variable to start with. So, like I said, every problem is different. Every problem is different. So since every problem is different, you've got to look at the problem and pay attention to the problem. The only problems that are pretty straightforward are the problems in which you already have opposites and the problems in which the numbers are the same, you just have to multiply by -1. Those are the only 2 that are pretty straightforward. The other elimination problems, you kind of have to sit and think before you start solving the problem. unless you have a brand new eraser that you want to use with the potential of making a whole bunch of mistakes. So it's just like a carpenter or someone who works construction. They measure twice and they cut once. The reason why they measure twice is so that they're absolutely certain before they make that cut. If you cut the wood and it's wrong, well, you just messed it up. And at this point, you're going to the hardware store and buying another 2x4. So it's best to take your time before you get to doing the job. So with that, we're going to start with our first word problem example. All right, so two people are working the same part-time and full-time job. The first employee works 12 hours at the part-time and 28 at the full-time, earning $650 in a given week. The second employee works 26 hours part-time, 14 full-time, earns $545. How much does each person make an hour at each job? So again, your first order of business is to read. It's to read the problem. So they're asking you, how much does each person make an hour at each job? So you have a part-time job, you have a full-time job. So, it's on the board here. So part-time will make X, full-time Y. Make one of them X, make one of them Y. So now we go back through the problem and start figuring it out. The first employee works 12 hours part-time and 28 hours full-time and makes $650. So I don't know how many hours that person works part-time. That's 12 times X. I don't know how many full-time. 28 Y. I know if I add those up, I came out with 650. So I made out with 650. Any questions on how that first equation got set up? All right, second equation. Second employee, 26 hours part-time, 14 full-time, earns $545. So the setup is pretty much the same. 26X, 14Y, 545. So there's our system. So you need two equations to kick the problem off. Any questions before we continue? Good in here? Let's keep it moving. So we're going to solve this using elimination. We're going to solve it using elimination. So we have our two equations. So 12 and 26 are not opposites. 28 and 14 are not opposites. So we have to ask ourselves, is there anything times 12 that will give me 26? No. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times 3 is 36. Jumps over 26. Is there anything times 14 that will give me 28? 2. So something times 14 equals 28, that would be 2. So we're going to take this bottom equation and multiply it times 2. So you're looking at the variables from each equation. So you have to start from the x's and look at the two numbers attached to the x.
Doesn't it have to be negative?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will be -2. So you have to look at you're trying to cancel out a variable. You're not trying to cancel out an equation, you're trying to cancel out a variable. So you start with the x's and see, is there anything that will line up? If not, then you go to the next variable. See, is there anything that will work out? Ultimately, if nothing comes out, then we pick a variable and we force the problem to work. So we're using 2, but just as Jalen pointed out, we're going to have to use a -2. Why? You must have opposites in order to cancel out. This is important, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot cancel out 2 positive numbers. Those are not opposites. One of the numbers has to be positive. One of the other numbers has to be the same number, and it's got to be negative. So this 2 has to be a negative 2. That 2's got to be negative in order for this to work. We're going to take the whole bottom equation, multiply by -2. So hopefully Christian is over there taking these notes down, because I want this quiz to hit for him.
Are we taking the quiz today or taking it home?
No, you take the quiz home. You have the weekend to do it. Do it on Monday. 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 So, first equation, we don't do our first equation, we simply rewrite. The second equation, you multiply all the way through. -2 times 26 is -52. -2 times 14, -28. -2 times 545 is -1090. So you should see at this point that you have your opposites. So there's your opposites. So your opposites drop out. Everything else gets added. Everything else you add up. So 12 plus -52 is -40. 650 plus -1090 is -440. And you divide. So x equals 11. So that means for this part-time job, you're making $11 an hour. Making $11 an hour part-time. All right. So So since I know what x is equal to, what do I do with it?
Plug it in.
So pick an equation, plug it in. It doesn't matter which one you pick, you get the same answer anyway. So I'm going to pick the first equation. Why? Because I felt like it. So 12 times 11 plus 28y equals 650. So 12 times 11 is 132. That's a easy two-step equation to knock out. Subtract 132. So you get 28y equals 518.
Yeah.
And then divide by 28. 518 divided by 28. 1850. So you can use either, where's my highlighter? That's not a highlighter. There we go. So you can either use one of the two equations that you started with, or you could use the equation that you got when you multiply. Either one of them. As long as you don't make any kind of mathematical mistake or arithmetic mistake, then you should be good to go.
What kind of job is that?
One that makes 11 and 18, one that makes 18.50 an hour.
Amazon
makes
facilities,
18.
Target warehouses make $18.50 an hour.
That's not a good full-time pay, though. I mean,
You know what's better than full time? You know what's better than that? It's better than nothing.
I mean, yeah.
I make 15 part-time, which is
Where do you work at?
Target.
Right, how did you get this Target? You know how hard it is to get hired at Target.
I just got lucky that my stepmother is a administrative assistant.
So, questions on example 6? So yeah, 11. So this person, well, these two make 11 part-time and 18.50 full-time, and wherever it is they're working. All right. So example 7. So before we start example 7 together, example 7. The sum of two numbers is 15, and the difference of those same two numbers is 21. Find the product of those two numbers. So, obviously, the only thing we don't know are the two numbers. We don't know the two numbers. So, first number is x, second number is y. First number is x, second number is y. So, I underlined 3 keywords: sum, difference, and product. What does sum mean? Add. So the sum of two numbers is 15. So x plus y equals 15. Difference is subtract. X minus y equals 21. Product means multiplying. But I can't multiply anything if I don't know what the two numbers are. So I can't answer this question until I know what the two numbers are. Any questions on the setup of the system first?
And so let's roll with, on these, they could really be anything. It could be 14 plus 1.
So 14 plus 1 is 15. 14 minus 1 is 13.
Oh, they have to match. Oh, okay, now I get it.
Hence why they said the same two numbers. So it's not a willy-nilly problem. So, if we look at this problem, what number is in front of all these variables? All these are ones. 1, 1, 1, 1. So you should notice very quickly that you have a pair of opposites sitting right there. -1 and +1. So you have opposites already sitting in that problem. You have opposites already sitting in the problem. So you can go right ahead and start solving. There's your opposites. Highlighter one, they drop. Those get added. So 1 plus 1 is 2. 15 plus 21 is 36. So one of your numbers is 18. One of your numbers is 18. So now you gotta find the other number. Take an equation, plug it in. So 18 plus y equals 15. So subtract your 18. So now we know what the two numbers are. So the numbers, 18 and -3. But this is where most of you get into trouble. Because you stop there and don't answer the question. If the question asks you, what are the two numbers? No. Question didn't ask you that. The question asks, find the product of these numbers. So product means multiplication. So 18 times -3, -54. So that's the answer to the question. That's the answer to the question. Now, for any of you who think that that problem was doing too much, then you go ask the colleges, you go ask every directional school here in Illinois why that problem is doing too much. Because that came off of last year's placement test.
Our college?
Yes.
No.
Everything you've done in this class this year have come off of other schools' placement tests. When you sit for their placement test, this is the test that you're taking.
All schools have.
Every school has a placement test. Every school has a placement test. Yeah, the only reason I know this is one of the people who graduated last year, who goes to Eastern now, is on their placement test. All I did was just change the numbers. Oh well, it is what it is. So let's do one more example. So, I'll give you a moment. let's do this. You can go to two different places for your 7-day trip to Florida, Miami and Orlando. It costs $275 per day to stay in Miami and $250 per day to stay in Orlando. Write a system of equations that represents this situation. If you have a total of $1,850 budgeted for this trip, how long can you stay in each city? So that's what they're first asking you. Those of you whose parents or people or family members have worked with travel agents or might be travel agents, this is what they do. You tell them where you want to go, you tell them how many days, and you tell them what budget you have, and that's what they're trying to figure out. Now, of course, there's a lot more involved. They got to get down to the nitty gritty with how much is the hotel, how much is airfare, how much is resorts, resort fees, and things of that nature. But this is what a travel agent does. You're just doing the very micro version of it. So, how long can you stay in each city? Means we need a variable for Miami and a variable for Orlando. One for Miami, one for Orlando. They're both good cities. Personally, I prefer Miami, but that's aside the point. So, X is the number of days in Miami, Y is the number of days in Orlando. How long is my vacation? Don't make that too hard and sit in the problem. How long is the vacation? 7 days. A 7-day vacation. That means however many days you stay in each place, that's add up to 7. And that's all you got. $275 to stay in Miami. It's $250 to stay in Orlando. And you have $1,850 to work with. So, there's our system. There's our two equations. Any questions so far? Let's see. Okay, you good?
Yep.
I checked yours already, so. Alright, so again, the X and the Y don't have numbers, so ones go for each. So the X's are not opposites, the Y's are not opposites. So now we have to pick a variable. Now we have to go and start looking at the letters. Let's start with the X. Is there anything times 1 that will give me 275? Anything times 1 that will give me 275? So it is 275, but see, you're actually correct in what you said. You're going to have to make it negative in order to cancel, in order for them to cancel out. So you weren't all the way, you weren't wrong. So we're going to multiply top equation by negative 275. At the end of the day, you need opposites to make this work. You need opposites to make it work. Point blank, period. Let's go ahead and make this work. Negative 275 times x, negative 275x, minus 275y, then negative 275 times 7 is negative 1925. So that's the top equation. The bottom equation we never touched. Stop me if I goofed up somewhere. You get a little senile in my old age. As history so eloquently reminded me. Oh, there you go. So where's my highlighter? There's my opposites. Again, opposite is same number, different signs. Got my opposites. They can drop out. Everything else gets added up. So negative 275 plus 250 is negative 25. Negative 1925 minus 1850 is negative 75. So y equals 3. So what about that? So y is equal to 3. So 3 days in Orlando. Run SeaWorld, Universal Studios. Go see the Magic play. Not really. Careless about seeing them play. So, I spent 3 days in Orlando. I only have 7 days to be on vacation. So this is pretty simple. If I only have 7 days of vacation, how long did I spend in Miami?
4 days.
4 days. And for that, or something like that, that should be pretty simple. But you can always take the answer you had, plug it back into your first equation. There you go. 4 days in Miami. And catch a Heat game, walk down Ocean Drive, sit on the beach. All that stuff. 4 days in Miami, 3 days in Orlando. Probably what I've been doing before, between when school lets out and when I start teaching some school.
Are you going to town?
Of course, I always take a vacation before I teach summer school. I think I deserve it. I think I deserve a little vacation. Any questions? Example 8. Any questions from anybody at home? Don't think I'm ignoring you while I'm sitting here. It's always nice to be able to look at people that are actually in the classroom instead of staring at blank desks. What I'll probably do is I'll take each of you all's pictures that are on your icons, make little table tents and put them in the classroom. At least that way I can look at those. All right, excellent. I can afford it.